Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. Today in this video, I want to talk about a bad habit that I'm trying to get out of with AZ login. And I'm sure a lot of other people have this habit too and maybe don't realize what kind of issue this can cause. So when I'm doing automation, so whether it be just some kind of scripting or quite often with Terraform, I'm doing an AZ login running this command up here. And if we follow the documentation, the first thing that we do is just do an AZ login, then do whatever we're going to do. And the problem that happens is I often get this error message that flags up. So what this tells me is I've got an issue logging into a tenant. So I'm just going to kind of call out a couple of bits here. So I've kind of grayed out the tenants that I have the issue with, but my user is a member of more than one tenant. So you can see there would have been an ID and a name for the tenant here. And this is kind of telling me that there's an access control conditional access policy that blocks me logging in. So what actually happens, if you notice in the bottom window here, is when I do an AZ login, it's actually kind of checking against a number of different tenants. That would be a tenant here, that would be a tenant here, and there's a couple of others it sort of flags me or sort of logs me into. So by default, AZ login is going and trying to log you in and get a list of all your tenants. And in this case, even though the tenant that it gives me this error for, I think somebody's just added me to a Teams environment as an external user or something. And I don't actually ever have any intention of doing any scripting or anything in there as your environment. But by default, AZ login is doing something under the hood, which triggers this conditional access policy here. Now, what that means is in that tenant, which isn't my tenant, is a third party who I might have spoke to at some point or whatever, in their security logs, that's going to show up in Enter ID as a failed login attempt by me because I tried to do an AZ login and it triggered their conditional access, which rejected me. Now, that's a real problem in some ways because their logs are going to show up. I've tried to authenticate, and if they go and dig into their security logs, they would legitimately have a question of, Mike, why are you trying to log into our environment? Even though that was never the intention of anything I was trying to do. I was just trying to do a demo on one of our environments, but under the hood AZ login tried to log me into their environment. So how you can work around this problem, I think this is really something if you're um, working with multiple customers. This is probably really important as people start looking at these kind of things. So when you specify AZ login, if you use the tenant parameter and you can specify the ID for the tenant you want to log into. So you can see when I kind of set this up here, I specified that parameter. I now no longer get that error message. I just get the prompt about the browser opening up. And it only specifically logs me into the tenants that I care about. So that's a good thing. It means it hasn't tried to log me into any other tenants because by default it's doing all of them, whereas I'm explicitly choosing the one that I want to log into. So that other tenant now won't have a log in their security logs saying I tried to log in and tripped their conditional access policy. Now, in the Microsoft documentation, I don't think this gets called out enough to say that this is a good thing to do. The examples are always just do AZ login, then get on with it. I think as a good practice, we should specify the tenant we want to log into. Actually, I would prefer this was made like a required parameter, so I don't accidentally log into anybody else's tenant, triggering these alerts, or accidentally, once I'm logged in, maybe then specify the wrong subscription and do something against the wrong tenant. So I've been trying to get myself in the habit of specifying that tenant parameter every time, even if it just does the simple thing of stopping those errors and potentially flagging up in my partner's security logs. So I hope people found this video interesting. Just a really short one today, just sharing some things I think people would find interesting and maybe haven't really thought of before. Have a great week. Take care.